Minister, can you outline the assessments that have and will be undertaken with regard to the Code of Conduct on mortgage arrears, including the suite of alternative repayment arrangements, and what are your plans to give the Code full legal effect?
Deputy Conway-Walsh, the Central Bank Code of Conduct on Mortgage Arrears, CCMA, is the key consumer protection measure for borrowers who are experiencing difficulty in relation to a mortgage which is secured on a primary residence. This statutory-based code, which is issued by the Central Bank under Section 117 of the Central Bank Act of 1989, sets out how regulated mortgage creditors must treat borrowers in or facing mortgage arrears. Regulated entities are required to comply with all aspects of the CCMA as a matter of law, and as such it has full legal effect. The objective of the CCMA is to ensure that regulated entities have fair and transparent processes in place to deal with their borrowers who are or facing mortgage arrears. Due regard must be given to the fact that each mortgage case is unique and needs to be considered on its own merits. All cases must be handled sympathetically and positively by the regulated entity, with the objective at all times of assisting the borrower to meet his or her mortgage obligations. In particular, the CCMA provides that, in order to determine which options for alternative repayment arrangements are viable for each particular case, the regulated mortgage creditor must explore all the options for alternative repayment arrangements offered by that creditor. Furthermore, if a borrower is not satisfied with the decision of the regulated entity in relation to this matter, such as if he or she is not happy with the particular alternative repayment arrangement offered by the mortgage creditor to assess the mortgage repayment difficulty, or if the mortgage creditor declines to offer an alternative arrangement, the CCMA provides that an appeals process must be in place to allow for the matter to be reconsidered. That appeals procedure must also inform the borrower of his or her right to refer the matter to the Financial Services and Pensions Ombudsman. The Central Bank carried out a review of the CCMA in 2018 to ensure it remains as effective as possible. The review found at that time, for borrowers who engaged with the process, that it was working effectively and as intended. The Central Bank, in conclusion, does keep its consumer protection framework under review, and as the Deputy will be aware, the Central Bank is currently reviewing its consumer protection code, and a discussion paper on this is now open for public consultation.
Minister, there are serious problems in how what you talk about is being adhered to and how it's been enforced. Indeed, these are well documented by FLAC from Pillar to Post series published in the last number of years. But as you say, it's crucial to ensure that the CCMA is fit for purpose, especially in the context of the rising interest rates, and we see more of those today. And those who are having repayment difficulties, this is becoming more and more prevalent. There is limited data on the type of restructures that take place between the lender and the borrower as well. But the data shows that the longer a mortgage is in arrears, the more difficult it is to get a restructure, with the minority of mortgages in arrears having received a restructure. There's also a concern regarding the premature classification of borrowers as non-cooperating, which immediately removes the borrower from the protection of mortgage arrears resolution process. And we have to ask if there is a need for greater supervision by the Central Bank of lenders prematurely classifying borrowers as non-cooperating, given its stark and immediate consequences for them.
Thanks very much, Deputy, and I think you raise very important issues there, which I know the Central Bank take very seriously. I think the review of the Consumer Protection Code is a very important body of work which is currently underway, and I would encourage all members of the House to engage in that process and to share the real-life experience of constituents that have been conveyed to us, so that the Central Bank are fully aware of what is happening on the ground in reality. I do think it's worth putting on the record that the level of mortgage arrears in Ireland has fallen very significantly. From For the quarter ending September last year, slightly over 45,700 primary dwelling mortgages were in arrears, and when those mortgages which are in very short-term arrears are excluded, some 30,800 were in arrears of more than 90 days. That's about 4.3% of all PDH mortgages, and back in 2013 that was almost 13%. Now that said, there is no room for complacency. We know that interest rates have risen and are likely to rise further, and that of course has an impact on the affordability of mortgage repayments for customers, and we don't want to see the progress that has been made in respect of mortgage arrears going into reverse. So the type of issues that the Deputy has raised are really important, and I know will be considered very carefully by the Central Bank in terms of their regulatory function.
Doctor?
Yeah, we need this to work for homeowners, Minister. There's clear evidence, as the Central Bank has warned many times, that the waterfall of alternative repayment arrangements has not been sufficiently worked through by lenders, with the easy and reflex option of sale to third parties and vulture funds used rather than finding the sustainable solutions for borrowers. There are a cohort of borrowers whose loans were sold to and are now owned by the vulture funds, with increasing interest rates suddenly rising sharply, and they are refusing to engage with the borrowers and offer fixed rates or consider sustainable solutions. Minister, there is a real problem here for those who are caught in the trap of mortgage arrears. Thanks.
I am aware that not all loan owners, non-bank lenders in particular, offer a fixed rate option, and a fixed rate option can be a very attractive one for a lot of borrowers. We've seen the run rate recently is about 92-93% of new mortgages being issued in Ireland are fixed rate in nature, because it does give certainty to the borrower about the nature and the level of their repayment for a period of time. It is the case under the CCMA that the mortgage creditor has to explore all the options for an alternative repayment arrangement offered by that lender, and the Central Bank has to ensure that that assessment is properly being done, and that every possible repayment arrangement is being explored, and indeed the most appropriate one offered to a borrower in that circumstance. And there is an appeals process in place as well to address that issue.